Hello, and welcome to Blessing Minds. Kindly like, share, and subscribe to more valuable content.
Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are literally pulling back the curtain on the hidden playbook of real estate wealth. We're going to take some of the most fascinating and honestly totally counterintuitive rules of property investing from our source material and break them down. We want you to see exactly how this financial machinery actually works under the hood. If you've ever found yourself wondering why the wealthiest investors on earth are just absolutely obsessed with land and buildings, well, you're in the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. How is it actually possible that a building can go up in value, generate cash every single month, and still legally appear completely unprofitable on paper? It's the ultimate curiosity gap of real estate. Our sources point out that this one paradox has minted more millionaires and billionaires than almost any other asset class in history. To the average person, it makes absolutely zero sense. But I promise you, once you understand the underlying mechanics, it is going to completely change how you view wealth.
Section 1. The Real Estate Paradox.
To understand how these billionaires are minted, we really have to look at the massive disconnect between real-life cash flow and paper losses. Usually, if an apartment building is fully rented, the tenants are paying on time, and the property's market value is going up, you'd probably assume the owner is reporting massive profits to the government, right? But very often they're legally reporting a loss, and it's all because of a mechanism called depreciation. The tax code essentially allows real estate owners to treat buildings as assets that slowly wear out over time. So imagine an owner collecting rent, paying down their mortgage, and building up equity. In the real world, they're getting richer. But on paper, the building is quote-unquote depreciating, which creates deductions that shelter their income. And this brilliantly illustrates why wealthy investors prioritize owning tax-advantaged assets over chasing those massive, highly taxed salaries. The government literally designed it this way on purpose, to encourage the development of housing, offices, and infrastructure.
Section 2. Turning debt into fuel. So we're shifting our perspective now from the micro level of tax deductions to how real estate radically changes our entire relationship with borrowing money. For most of us, just hearing the word debt triggers anxiety. Everyday consumer debt, like credit cards or car loans, creates this enormous pressure. It comes with penalizing interest, it's heavily linked to stress, and you generally want to escape it as fast as humanly possible. But in the property market, debt stops behaving like a burden. It actually starts acting like high-octane fuel for wealth accumulation. It functions as fuel because, well, the mortgage is actually paid down by your tenants. Plus, over time, inflation slowly eats away at the real burden of that fixed-rate debt. It is a complete paradigm shift.
Let's actually look at the mechanics of leverage here. Imagine two people, and they each invest $1 million. The first person buys stocks with cash. If the market goes up 10%, they make $100 grand. Not bad at all. But the second person, they use that exact same $1 million as a 20% down payment to buy $5 million worth of real estate. When that market goes up 10%, they capture a $500,000 gain. Because banks are so willing to lend heavily against physical collateral, you get to control the appreciation on the full $5 million. It effectively multiplies your wealth.
Section 3. Climbing the property ladder.
So how do everyday people actually put these principles into practice? How do we use these macro rules of debt and depreciation to build wealth? Well, you don't start out buying skyscrapers. It's a step-by-step process. The game begins right here with the accessible ladder. Step 1 is what we call house hacking. You buy a small duplex, you live in one side, and you rent out the other side, so your tenant effectively pays your mortgage. Boom, you've just turned housing from an expense into an income stream. From there, you move up to an entry-level landlord collecting leveraged semi-passive income. And if you really want to optimize things, you step up to an Airbnb entrepreneur. By offering short-term rentals in high-demand cities like Miami or Lisbon, our sources note you can generate 2 to 3 times more monthly income than you'd get from a standard long-term lease.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the strategy shifts as you climb higher. Advanced investors start targeting assets that sound honestly incredibly boring, but they are wildly predictable. Look at self-storage facilities. They have minimal upkeep and have averaged 16% returns over the last 25 years. Or farmland, which produces food and appreciates steadily. I mean, there's a reason Bill Gates is the largest farmland owner in the US, right? And at the mogul level, you stop using just your own money entirely. You create syndicates pooling funds from others, which proves that in real estate, 1 plus 1 can literally equal 11 through sheer scale.
Section 4. The BRR Wealth Machine.
So what if you want to scale up fast without waiting decades to save your own cash? This strategy acts quite literally as a money printer for investors who are aiming to rapidly scale their portfolios and build wealth layer by layer. Let's move to and see how this builds. BRR stands for buy,
renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. You buy a rundown property below market value, you renovate it to force its value higher, you rent it out to secure that cash flow. Then, and this is the absolute magic step, you go to the bank and refinance based on the new higher value of the home. You pull your original cash out and you use it to buy the next property. It's amazing.
So the crucial point is this. Selling creates taxes, but borrowing usually does not. By using the BRRRR strategy, you aren't selling that renovated house to get your profit. Instead, you are extracting usable capital from your rising equity via a loan. You keep the asset, you keep the tenant who's paying down the debt, and you completely avoid the taxes you would have paid if you had simply flipped the house.
Section 5. Betting on human movement.
Now that we've mastered the mechanics of individual properties, it is time to zoom out to a really profound macroeconomic thesis. I absolutely love this quote from our sources. Real estate investors are really just betting on human movement. Because the deeper game isn't actually about the bricks, the roofs, or the buildings at all. The real game is predicting where millions of people are going to live, work, and spend their money before everyone else gets there.
And looking back through history proves this point perfectly. Think about it. In the 1800s, Manhattan was just farmland. In the 1900s, Miami was mostly a swamp. In the 1970s, Silicon Valley was just fruit orchards. The land itself didn't intrinsically change. What changed was human activity. When people, businesses, and infrastructure concentrate in one area, the land quietly absorbs the value of all that activity. Our sources even highlight that a massive company like McDonald's derives a ton of its long-term power not just from selling burgers, but from owning the highly trafficked land sitting underneath those restaurants.
Section 6. Too big to fail.
This leads us to the peak of the mountain, the final boss of the real estate wealth ladder. Tens of trillions of dollars. Objectively speaking, based on our source material, this is the immense scale of capital backing massive institutional investors like BlackRock. When you reach this level, a systemic safety net protects them, and the game completely shifts from generating monthly cash flow to exerting sheer market power. These funds buy thousands of homes in bulk, sometimes snapping up entire neighborhoods before everyday buyers even get a chance to put in an offer. They are operating on a scale that fundamentally alters the entire housing landscape. And they can take these massive risks because of a quiet, underlying reality. Our sources impartially note that the 2008 crash proved a terrifying fact. The global economy is deeply, inextricably tied to real estate. I mean, who relies on property values going up? Basically everyone. Banks hold mortgage debt. Pension funds absolutely need commercial returns to pay retirees. Local governments rely on property taxes to fund schools. And everyday homeowners rely on it for their net worth. Because so much of the system depends on property values rising, governments quietly structure incentives to keep the market healthy and moving upward.
And that brings us to the final, somewhat uncomfortable reality of the system we have explored today. Based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer, from tax incentives to debt mechanics, all the way up to institutional power, we're left with this memorable, provocative question to really reflect on. If permanent property collapses damage the entire global economy, can we actually afford to make housing truly affordable? Thank you so much for joining me to decode this incredible topic today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.
Kindly like, share, and subscribe to more valuable content.